Hi, everyone. My name is Bridget Cabrera, she, her, hers, and I'm the Executive Director of Methodist Federation for Social Action. MFSA is an over 100-year-old faith-based policy and organizing network. Our mission is to mobilize, lead, and sustain a progressive United Methodist movement, engaging people to be agents of God's justice, peace, and reconciliation. We have been doing these series of webinars with our very dear partner, United Methodist for Kairos Response, and we're so excited to be co-hosting this webinar together again. Our webinars are a place to learn, engage, and be in community together. We are recording this webinar, and that recording will be shared in the coming days. And so we also encourage you to share this video and recording with others that you think might be interested in what we've discussed today. As you have questions, please type them in the chat. There'll be opportunity for questions later on in our conversation today. And so you don't have to wait until that time to ask your questions. Sometimes I know I forget. So if it comes to you, go ahead and put it in the chat, and we have a way to collect all of those and try to get to those. Closed captioning is available. You should hopefully be seeing it at the bottom of your screen. Send me a chat if you're not. But do expect that there will be spelling errors and other errors. They are automatically generated. So thanks for being here, and I will now turn it over to our moderator, John.
Hi, everybody. My name is John Wagner. I'm one of the co-chairs of United Methodist for Kairos Response. We've been around for about 10 years. We're one of many denominational efforts to seek justice for Palestine, reconciliation, a just reconciliation and peace for Palestine and Israel. So we're very pleased to be with you. I want to welcome all those of you who are United Methodists, of course, but there are many others from across the spectrum, the religious spectrum, and everyone else. And really the intention of this is to highlight the sister city relationships, their possibility for being a transforming relationship for a community and for Palestine and the rest of the world. So that's kind of our goal today. And to explicate that, we have some special guests. But I want to, our presenters, and I'll introduce the first one in a moment, but I also want to say we have some people who are associated now with sister city efforts that have been attempted. Some have succeeded. We have people from the United States and Palestine and perhaps some other places. So at the very end of our webinar, we'll have a time for those persons to be acknowledged and briefly introduce themselves so that you see who they are, and then we can make connections that way. I'd like to first introduce Esria Charon, who is the co-founder and current vice chair of the Boulder Nablus Sister City Project, which was designed to inspire cross-cultural friendships between Americans and Palestinians. She serves now also as executive director of Pilgrims of Ibilene and has extensive experience in connecting people with the goals of peace and justice in the Middle East. I first got acquainted with Esria personally when I was had a small role with the sister city relationship with Dayton, Ohio, and we'll hear more about that when Yusuf Elzine gets a chance to speak. But it's just been a pleasure getting to know her. Welcome, Esria.
Thank you, John. It's really wonderful to be here. Thank you all for coming. So as John mentioned, I am the co-founder of the Boulder Nablus Sister City Project, which we launched over 10 years ago. And before that, I was involved in helping to establish a hiking trail that sort of brushed off the footsteps of Patriarch Abraham. It's called Abraham's Path. And so I've been working in the region of historic Palestine for over 15 years now. And in that process, I've learned a great deal, and I'm really highly inspired and motivated to help others to succeed as we did here in Boulder. It was a challenging journey, but it was incredibly rewarding, and I appreciate Kairos Response for creating this opportunity to share more about the vehicle of a sister city relationship as a means, the mechanism to help support a more just peace in Palestine for all people. And so why I feel that sister cities are so valuable and an integral part of any community's efforts is, I'll just give you a little bit of background. So anyone who's been involved in this field realizes that part of our work is to challenge the narrative. And we all know that the sort of the established narrative is controlled by what I call anti-Palestinian forces. And they have a lot of resources. They have way more resources than those of us who are working for justice in Palestine. And so that means, in my mind, that we got to get creative. And I really feel like a sister city relationship is a creative approach because it appears so benign on the surface, and yet I found it personally in my community to be incredibly powerful, way more powerful than you might suspect of a sister city. So why do I feel like it was so powerful here? And I feel like it's an incredibly effective means of raising awareness across an entire community very quickly with very few resources. And why is that? Well, at least in our experience and from conversations that I've had with folks who either have attempted a sister city or who have achieved it, what most communities encounter is strong opposition within the community. And I know that is not the case with Dayton, and you'll hear from Yusuf in a little bit. And Yusuf had a very different experience than almost anybody else in the United States, as well as in other Western countries around the world, where any effort to recognize a Palestinian city elicits a very vociferous opposing force. And of course, the media will take note of that. And so in Boulder, when we were trying to get our city council to approve Nablus as a sister city, the media was reporting on this constantly. We got regular attention because in a way, it doesn't really make sense that anybody would be opposed to a cultural exchange program. And so we got a lot of media attention, not just local. We also got picked up on statewide outlets, national outlets like the Associated Press, as well as international outlets. And I mean, I swear this was like blanketing Boulder for weeks and weeks at a time. And to the point where anywhere I went in meeting complete strangers, and they, I told them about what I do, they were like, oh yeah, I heard about that. I swear, I mean, it was all over Boulder. And what is really interesting also is that it brings the opposition to a sister city, creates dissonance, cognitive dissonance in anyone who hears it. Like, why would anybody be opposed to a sister city? Like, aren't they exactly what we need in this world? We need more cultural bridge building efforts. Like, that's how the average person thinks. And so when you create that dissonance in someone's mind, what it does is it inspires folks to want to understand more. Not everybody is going to, but there's always a certain segment of the population. So it's a very effective means of reaching way beyond the usual supporters and activists that you might already have in your circle. So it reaches way beyond that. Another reason why I feel like it's an incredibly powerful vehicle is because of the opportunity to do something. I hear this all the time with people who care, people who are deeply concerned about the situation in Palestine. They just want to do something, and do something more than just calling legislators that kind of doesn't really do much or do something more than going out to Palestine rallies, where you see the same, essentially the same people, the same faces over and over and over again. So a sister city project allows you, and it creates an opportunity for something constructive, a constructive contribution that you can make that from speaking to my colleagues in Nablus and in Palestine is greatly appreciated, to create opportunities for collaboration and connection and ultimately humanizing an entire people who are otherwise dehumanized greatly in our media, at least here in the United States. Another reason why I find sister cities so beneficial in any given community is because sister city projects, which are cross-cultural exchange projects, will draw to your organization, your project, a new set of people. You can expand your network because sister cities draw way beyond those who are politically active or political activist types, and so the types that I have seen drawn towards our project are the adventurous ones, like the people who love exploring new people, new cultures, and they actually know nothing about the political situation. But what ends up happening is we bring those folks to Palestine, or we engage them here to engage with Palestinians, and all of a sudden their eyes are opened, their lives are transformed, as you probably know from your own experience of traveling to Palestine, how transformational that experience is. Well, that is what happens too with these folks who are not in any way politically active, but upon experiencing Palestine, they're changed forever. And many of them will become politically active as a result. So, so those are some of the reasons why I find sister cities to be so valuable, like sort of an additional contribution to the work that you're already doing. And so what is a sister city? A sister city is a very broad umbrella that includes pretty much any activity that is people-to-people citizen diplomacy. The idea is to promote a more peaceful planet by creating bonds of friendship and understanding across cultures. And sister cities under that umbrella are pretty free to do all sorts of different activities. Some are more focused on commercial exchange. In Boulder, we have an emphasis that's dictated by our city council to focus on humanitarian efforts. But we've created all kinds of different projects, like some of the ones that we've done over 10 years of our existences. We did pen pal programs connecting 4th and 5th and 6th graders with each other. We did a yoga exchange, bringing yoga teachers to get advanced training so that they could go back and start training yoga teachers in their community. We sent dancers to participate in an international cultural festival. We have exchanged Fulbright professors from the university in Nablus and the university here. In fact, we currently are hosting a Fulbright professor at this very moment. We're also hosting a biochemistry engineering student at our university in Boulder this semester, and she's working in the laboratory right now that she told me that there is nothing even close to the instruments that we have back at home. So she's really enjoying her time now. And all kinds of other means and mechanisms to connect people from each community. And many will say you could do these activities without being a sister city, and that is true. In fact, in the United States, there are several friendship cities that are doing very similar activities currently. And what I will say to that, though, is we did those activities before we got our official sister city status, and we're continuing after. And I really noticed this enormous difference when we received our official sister city status. And what I noticed is that a lot of doors opened to us that were otherwise closed. For instance, our entire school district, the Boulder Valley School District, refused. The entire school district said that no teacher could work with us. So our pen pal projects had to be with private schools. But then after we got approved, that was lifted and they no longer could remain closed off to us, because, and they said that they were closed off to us because it was too divisive or too controversial or something, some excuse like that. But anyway, many doors opened. The school district, the local museum wanted to work with us, the library. And another one that's like very touching to me is now there's a permanent stone tile sculpture in the heart of Boulder that says Nablus Palestine on it. And so those kinds of things you can't get with a friendship city. And ultimately getting that approval from city council lends a ton of credibility and legitimacy that have very far-reaching benefits. Like people will want to work with us, like travel to Palestine with us, because we are an official sister city that otherwise they would not have come close to us. So how do you create a sister city? Well, every city across the United States has different rules for how you do it. So in Boulder, there's a resolution, there's criteria that we had to meet, like we had to be our own independent nonprofit. So therefore we had to have a bylaws, we had to have a board of directors, a budget, and so on. And so we jumped through all of those hoops. And but each city has a different set of rules, and you kind of got to do that research on your own to understand what your city is looking for in any group of people who would like to create a sister city project. In terms of like, what city do you choose in Palestine? My strong advice, I mean, ultimately it is up to you, and it's generally advisable if you already have some relationships established to just build upon what you already have. However, I will say my strong advice is to select a less popular city. Just to give you an example, Bethlehem is the place that most people think of as their sister, and that's probably why they already have over 4 dozen sisters around the world. That's almost 50 or more sisters around the world. And so, in other words, Bethlehem is an easy city to choose, but I say go for something challenging like Hebron. Hebron not only needs our support, Hebron desperately needs our support, but we also have to remember that the whole reason that we're doing this is to help raise awareness. And so Hebron, being a controversial community, will draw a ton more media attention than Bethlehem will. And that's like, we want to keep our eyes on the prize, and the prize is justice. The prize is justice. It's not getting your sister city official with your city council. It's raising awareness, educating people, breaking through the control of the message, right? We have to break through, and this is a way that we can get through to people. And so choosing a city like Hebron or Jenin has incredible upside. And even if you go before your city council and they vote it down, you go back again and again. I mean, I was literally prepared to just keep going back as many times as it took, because I knew that it was a win every time, because we garnered so much media attention. And with every visit, and we did 3 visits to city council before we got approved, with every visit, the media attention got even greater and greater and greater. So it felt like it was a win either way. Yeah.
As Rhea, did the attention fall off at all after you got the sister city relationship?
Off a cliff, completely. Yes. Yeah, nothing after we got it. It was all before.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
Right, well,
so that's just a sort of an overview, and I'll hand it back off to you, John. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esria. I'd like to move now to Yusuf Elzine, also a personal friend of mine. But before I do, just to remind you, if you have questions for The presenters, you can put them in the chat box, just type them in, and we have, we'll look at those and try to answer as many of your questions as possible. Yusuf Alzine is a Lebanese American who has been a key organizer in the campaign to establish a sister city relationship with his city of Dayton, Ohio, and the Palestinian city of Salfit in the West Bank. Yusuf has worked as a civil engineer for 35 years, and he's been involved in a great many local efforts at interreligious dialogue, various kinds of community activism, charitable projects, local politics. But justice for Palestinians has been a long time pursuit of his, and we welcome you, Yusuf.
Well, thank you, John. Thank you, Methodist Federation, for hosting this nice, peaceful event that hopefully will provide valuable information and resources, including myself and others that are excited about promoting this kind of relationship between any city in the US and any city in Palestine. And I'm dedicating my time, I will dedicate my time and effort to make this happen, I promise you. So what you see behind me, those are not olive branches growing from my ears, but it's actually the first thing we did is establish this logo. I'm gonna turn it off for a little bit. This logo was the first thing we did in order to make sure that we are serious about this effort. It was through an artist that worked with one of my colleagues. His name is Haytham Shtaye. He's a Palestinian American. And Dr. Awad Al-Halabi, he's a professor at Wright State. He is originally, his parents were from Bethlehem, I believe, and he's a professor at Wright State University in Dayton. However, this whole idea started during the height of COVID in 2020, working remotely from home, full-time job, still maintaining my volunteer efforts with the Red Cross and others. I thought I'm running out of things to do, spending 24/7 at home. So the next best effort that I came up with, since I've seen the sister city flags at City Commission in Dayton, Ohio, who I used to be an employee for the city of Dayton. So I've seen the flags in City Commission's chambers. The first thing that crossed my mind, my goodness, that is missing one flag that I want to raise. And it wasn't the Lebanese flag, it was the Palestinian flag. The good thing is on the left-hand side of the flag of the setup is the Israeli flag, because Dayton has a sister city relationship with Holon, Israel. And I thought, my goodness, on the right-hand side, how beautiful it would be to have the Palestinian flag. So the idea started there. And yes, believe it or not, the first person I reached out to was my brother, John Wagner, because I knew he had the wealth of contacts around the nation to help me start that. I sent a blanket email to many of our community members that I've known that have been active. Unfortunately, we didn't get a heavy response from Arab Americans to join. However, the wealth of contacts that John shared with me was enough to connect me with many, many activists that are sitting on this webinar, including Azria, John David from Muscatine, Iowa, Patricia Daughtry from Sacramento, and others that shared everything they know to get me started. Then, luckily, we had two dedicated other members from the community, Haytham and Awad, to fill in the gap and get us going. The first thing, and I encourage everyone that is really considering such a relationship, is to establish contacts. This is very, very important. I've been in Dayton for 21 years, and because of my big mouth and the willingness to learn a lot about the city, I made lots of contacts with city commissioners, the mayor, not because I care about politics, but because I knew if my community cannot establish that kind of relationship, we're nowhere to be found. My relationship was very, very cordial. very supportive to them, not necessarily again on political basis, but to raise awareness of our Arab American, Muslim American community in Dayton. That was very, very beneficial, because the first email I sent to the 4 commissioners and the mayor asking their opinion, they all came back, do your job, go through the sister city committee in Dayton, and we will all be supportive. Now, that was July 2020. I was taken aback by that response. So that means now I have to do my homework. So I reached out to the sister committee chair. So Dayton has the sister committee. It's different than what Denver has. Azria had to establish her relationship totally independent. Dayton has a well-established part of the city of Dayton sister city committee. So we were so fortunate that it happened that the previous chair was a student and graduate of Wright State University, and his master thesis was related to the Palestinian plight living in the Israeli territories and the West Bank. So that was the first opportunity for us to know that we're on the right track, because he was supportive. The next thing, he appointed a vice chair that to help us. His name is Dr. Vaughn Shannon. He's another professor at Wright State University, and he teaches a lot about Middle Eastern history. So what a great start. So now we established that that base, that foundation to get us going and setting up. And I tell you, it wasn't easy. The Sister City Committee agreed to host us for a presentation. So what you see here is the presentation that we prepared for actually the Sister City. You can see the current 6 cities relationship. And I took this banner out of the website for our sister city. And I drew this and included Salfit, along with our logo that you see behind me, were part of this presentation. So this is next, if you don't mind. So we went on with a challenge to select a city to come in front of the committee. Because of the list that I put together with the help of many others around the nation, we could not agree on what is the best city we selected. We listened to Azria because the advice that she just gave, don't look only for very important cities, look for some city that need us the most. So we put a list actually of about 5 cities that we researched and evaluated. And I sent a survey out to the contacts that I generated. And we narrowed it down to 3 cities: Salfit, Jenin, and another city, I forgot which one, because we looked at similarities. So the first thing you see in our logo, you see a biplane, and you see the olive trees. The biplane is what Dayton is all about, aviation, because of the Wright brothers. And the olive trees is what we decided that will be the symbol of peace. Finally, we found out that Salfit is the largest governorate in Palestine that grows olives. So this happened to be our best selection for this relationship. Salfit, if you got next slide. Salfit was one of the reasons we selected is what we put together in order to convince the Dayton Sister City Committee why they need to get us in. We focus on similarities. Higher education, Salfit has 2 higher education universities. Dayton has this, you can see about 4 or 5, maybe 6 higher education universities. History, it wasn't only in the Holy Land, but Salfit goes back to the dates of the Canaanites. It has a wealth of history. The human concern, as you know, is that the promotion of the Palestinian culture and plight. Peacemaking, as Ria started this, the purpose of Sister City is to promote citizen diplomacy. Dayton is well known for the peace treaty between Sarajevo and Bosnia, Bosnia and Sarajevo, Bosnia and, I forgot, but there is is well known for that peace treaty that was signed at Wright Pat Air Force Base. So that triggered our decision to promote peace among citizen diplomacy. Culture exchange, they have lots of folklore. We have a lot of local art, archaeology. We talked about the existing history. Water resources, what you see in red are the things that are heavily found between the two of us. Dayton sits on a very, very wealth aquifer, huge aquifers. Salfit sits on many of them, but unfortunately they cannot use due to many restrictions and pollution coming from, unfortunately, sewer flowing into the valley. Family ties, we have many Palestinian Americans, including Dr. Halabi and Haytham. They have family ties in Palestine. Agriculture, as we spoke, Salfit was very well known for the olives and manufacturing. So this is what we presented to the committee. Next, to show them our similarities. Now, the committee was not that helpful. They listened to us and then they throw this challenge. Why is it that we need to accept a seventh sister city? We need you to go out to the community and solicit support. So what we did, I think the next slide will speak a little bit about it, we collected a wealth of contact information from around the nation and the Dayton area. And I encourage every one of you, especially for locals, you can go to your election board and you can download all the registered voters in your county, in your city, and basically narrow it down to those that you're interested in communicating with. And basically that's how I created my contact information, and I solicited their support via a monkey survey that I put together explaining why we need to do a seventh sister city to convince our committee to accept us. We actually solicited close to about 700 yes votes, including sending letters to the city mayor and others in support of this relationship. And here we held our first informal conversation that you see in the bottom corner is the governor of Salfit, where with Dr. John DeBeat, we introduced this concept to him back in October, and he was all for it. And from there on, we started organizing our local efforts to get it through the sister city committee, which they held a vote in January of 2021. So here it is, 7 months after the fact, where we got our first opportunity for a vote. At that time, we were very, really nervous wreck about opposition from other uninterested organizations. I managed through contacts to reach out to many of them, to explain to them the purpose of this relationship, promoting citizen diplomacy, promoting the culture and the heritage of Palestine and the Palestinian people. It wasn't at all a political organization under the umbrella of the Sister City Committee. We cannot act as such. So many were convinced that this is only going to promote peace, and some organizations local to Dayton decided not to support us, but they also pledged not to oppose us when this comes to an actual ordinance or vote by the city commission. Next slide. So in January of this year, we had our opportunity for a vote after we delivered letters from the governor of Salfit. He actually recorded also a message that we presented to them, showing appreciating the interest and appreciating the committee allowing us to be in front of them next. And the vote, to all our surprise, came to be a yes. And from there on, those are actual images of the government of Salfit, just showing the wealth that they have as a government. We ended presenting this PowerPoint presentation that you see in front of you to the city mayor and to the other 4 commissioners separately in order to sell our program and to have it in front of them for a vote at the commission. And that was granted in April of 2021. And it was virtual. And we received 5 yes votes. Nobody in attendance even objected to it. And here we are, a very active sister city organization subcommittee, the 7th in Dayton. And if you can go, yeah.
Just, we need to go to our questions here pretty soon, but I just wanted to find out, how'd you feel that day when it passed?
I cried, actually. I cried because one of the commissioners, his name is Darrell Fairchild, that some of you might know. He actually teared up as well, saying a verse from the Bible. I have it recorded. I cannot remember it, I'm sorry, but I can send it. But goosebumps stayed with me. They come and go for a second or two, but they stayed with me the entire day because I didn't believe what I saw. And from there on, we are continuing. We established steering committee in Salfit, and we're working hard to make it a worthwhile for our community in Dayton as well as Salfit.
Thank you, Yusuf. Just a reminder that we do have a chat available for questions for both Yusuf and Esria, and we'll get to those in just a moment. But first, we have a special video from John DeBeat, who is the Palestinian representative for Sister Cities International here in the US. He actually helped to establish a sister city relationship with Muscatine and, oh shoot, now I can't remember what the city was in Palestine.
Ramallah, I think.
Ramallah, that's right. We're going to show that video now. He has a special greeting for all of you on the webinar.
Greetings, citizen diplomats. My name is John DeBeat, Sister Cities International honorary board member, and also country of Palestine representative. We would like to extend our appreciation to those who organized this event and to those who are participating in this event today. Let's remember that we have 5 sister cities relationship between United States and Palestine, and we are working on adding a few, hopefully soon. If you have any questions and or comments, please feel free to call me at 563-554-1353. Or you can email me at johndebeat@gmail.com. Wish you all the best and my best regards to all. Thank you.
We're grateful to John DeBeat, and he was actually with us briefly on the webinar, but then had to go. So we are open now for some questions, and what I'll do is ask the questions and then give both Yusuf and Esria a chance to answer. And I'm hoping, Yusuf, that you'll let us see your nice face again so we can see you as you respond to these questions. The first one, I think, we'll just get off right at the bat. A number of questions have come in from you all asking about relationships with Jewish communities. I know they're a diverse community within any community and not necessarily monolithic in support of Israel, but that has been a question of many people. So I'm going to give both of you a chance to briefly address that, starting with you, Esria.
Okay, great. So my background is I was raised in the Jewish tradition. And so I knew when we decided to start this project that there are definitely some in that community who might feel uncomfortable with a relationship with a city in Palestine. So what I did immediately was I made a spreadsheet of any organization in the Boulder area that had anything to do with the Jewish community. I mean, I just threw out a very wide net, and I started calling folks one by one by one and asking for a meeting in person. Most didn't want to meet with me in person. They were fine with a phone call. So I told them what I was doing, and I asked them, what concerns might your constituents have, if any? And so I did that with, I don't know, somewhere between 12 and 20 different organizations. And what I heard almost universally from all of them was, oh, what you're doing sounds wonderful. Yeah, no, I don't have any concerns really. But the one thing that I did hear folks ask for over and over and over again was, well, even though I don't really think there's any concerns, it would be really great if you did a sister city in Israel at the same time that you're doing a sister city in Palestine. Then if you did that, you would surely have no problem at all with our, the people in my community. And my response to them, and honestly, I heard that request, probably hundreds of times in the 5.5 years that it took us from our start to when we got our sister city vote at city council, probably hundreds and hundreds of times. Why don't you do a city in Israel at the same time? And my response was always the same. It was, you really don't want me to do a sister city with Israel because that's not where my passion is. My passion is with Palestine, the people, the culture, and that's where my energy is. You should probably look for somebody else who's passionate about Israel, not me. Really, I would not do it justice. So that was always my response. But anyway, so we did a lot of outreach. And then, as time went on, there was members of our board of directors who are absolutely passionate about building relationships with the members of our Jewish community. So they did monthly meetings, like dialogue meetings, and I was not involved in it because that's not necessarily my passion, but there were members of our board who were passionate about that and did enormous legwork to build bridges. And then in 2013, we had our first city council hearing, and it seemed as if all of the work that we did just seemed to evaporate. It was completely as if we had done nothing. And all of those very same people that we had been engaging with for 3 years all came out in opposition to our project. And what their repeated line was, well, we don't mind you're doing those activities. It's just that we don't want city council to support it by giving a stamp of approval. So they felt like if city council makes us official, then it's almost the same as city council taking a side in an international conflict, which of course is not what a sister city is, but they were interpreting it in that way. So we did do a lot of work, before and after. And by the third hearing, we had so much support from members of the Jewish community that it was almost like there were some opposed and there were some in favor. So it didn't sound as like ubiquitous coming from the Jewish community opposed, because we had so many people who were Jewish and supported us. So that's just like a little nutshell.
Thank you, Esria. Yusuf, just a brief answer to this. I think we know your story a little bit, but if you can share that.
Well, the good thing is the Palestinian flag will be raised in the commission chamber later this week. So this is I forgot to mention that, but yes, I used to belong to a group called in Dayton, the Interfaith Trialogue. After September 11, the Northern Christian Connection established this trialogue to include Muslims in the dialogue going on between the Jewish and the Christian community. So as a result of that relationship, the first thing I did is also send out to people that I know. Some of them were not active anymore. Others were not interested to respond. So I took that as no objection, at least from the community members that I know in Dayton. And then I reached out to the Holon sister city representative, who happened to be actually a sitting county commissioner. So I thought if she has to oppose it, or the Holon subcommittee, they'll be the first one to do that. Instead, she right away expressed her support to the effort. So that two down. The third one, through the University of Dayton, I was introduced to the director of the Jewish Federation, director here in Dayton, which, as you remember, John, you had your doubt, and Azria, that they're going to stand in front of us in opposition. Instead, they were initially supportive when they listened and heard what we can do, and they pledged not to oppose us. The one thing I would say before that, I never faced anybody asking us to join Holon as two groups. Instead, the questions that I received, because many knows that I'm from Lebanon, why am I championing a city in Palestine instead of Lebanon? But that was none of their business, and that's what I told them to their faces, and that's the story, and we're here.
Okay, thank you both. I'd like to go to just a real practical question, and that is, how do you ideally choose a sister city? Do you need to choose one that correlates with yours in size and population? And perhaps that could also be extended to other kinds of similarities or dissimilarities. And again, I'll just ask briefly, let's start with you again, Yusuf, and then go to Esria.
No, thank you, John. This was a very, very critical approach that we decided to take very, very early in our process to avoid any reason for, be it the City of Dayton commissioners or the committee, to say why self-feed. We actually worked hard to establish that similarity way up front, to avoid any opposition. And you saw the list. There is about 6 or 7 similarities. And that's the purpose of really doing your homework and your research to avoid any opposition. And the focus of the other 6 cities were very important because they had a lot to do with Dayton and the history, like the Osaka, Japan. It was because NCR was a member of the a big business in Dayton, and they had a big
national cash register, right?
Correct. And that's when they started it. The one in Germany, the same thing, because of relationship with manufacturing. The latest one, City of Rushmore at the UK, is because they have an air show and they have an aviation interest. Dayton is a big place for aviation, be it Wright-Patt Air Force Base or the big Dayton International Air Show every year. So yes, selecting similarities is very important.
Thank you. Esria, anything there?
Well, I would concur with Yusuf that that's typically how sister cities are selected. And also what I know to be true is that you can find similarities with pretty much any other community. And so because Our goal with Palestinian sister cities is really to help chip away at the narrative, which will help to lead to a just peace for all in Palestine. Again, I really emphasize the more controversial community that you select in Palestine, the more effective your efforts will be in achieving the goal that we all are aiming towards.
Okay, thank you. You've both addressed this in your presentations, but I thought perhaps some things that occurred to you as we're going along, and you've heard each other's presentations. Starting with you, Asria, what cautions might you suggest one look out for if you first decide a sister city in my community? I mean, just starting out, if you're going to create a template of any sort, what would you suggest to people who might be interested on this call?
Well, so one thing that I've noticed of sister cities attempting to make a relationship in Palestine is that the folks who are opposed, and this is true in Australia, in England, you know, in addition to the United States, is that those opposed are going to say that selecting a Palestinian sister city is by its very nature a political act. And sister cities are supposed to be non-political entities, which is true. And what I say to that is being non-political is a luxury afforded the privileged. And so there is such a thing, there's a very clear distinction between discussing political realities that the oppressed must endure versus political advocacy. And a sister city relationship is not an advocacy organization. It is a relationship building friendship, building person-to-person diplomacy, which of course, diplomacy can be seen as political, but that it would be true of any sister city, not just a Palestinian sister city. So that's one thing that you are likely to encounter in your city, but I'll let Yusuf also speak to this.
Go ahead, Yusuf.
Well, thank you. Really, what I like to encourage everyone is to establish a very good relationship with the sitting government, from the city commission to the city mayor, whoever you can set up, because we all know the controversy. The minute you say Palestine, even people don't want to say Palestine. We were asked to change that to West Bank, but we refused. And we kept it Palestine. It's listed as Selfie Palestine. So we know all that coming in. But the moment you establish that relationship with the political establishment, you know that they're going to support you one way or another if there is an opposition in front of them. We might lose, but at least you'll have them on your side, and you will be able to address any of their concerns in person, in private, instead of in public. They will be more prepared. They'll be ready to help you get it through. And then the next thing is your local organizations. Reach out to them and gain their support before you set up your journey to establishing that relationship locally.
Okay. I'm going to ask each of you, we have some very interesting questions, by the way, about sister city possibilities in Gaza, you know, the advantages, disadvantages of that, a number of other questions, and people sharing experiences about the kinds of opposition they had, a number of questions still about the Jewish community appearing anti-Semitic and so forth. I would encourage you to investigate further by following up on the contacts that we provided with Yusuf and Asria, and with our organization, United Methodist for Cairo's Response. We'd be glad to direct you to persons who can give you really good answers. I'm going to also remind you that after the hour is over, we're about 3 minutes away, we will have a time for more informal chat, and those of you who are directly involved with sister cities, either in Palestine or here in the US or elsewhere, we'll give you a chance to identify yourselves. But the last thing I'd like to ask from Yusuf and Asria is just maybe 1 minute each, just a personal memory that you feel like needs to be included, and perhaps an encounter that that is significant for you. So I'm going to start with you, Esria, if you don't mind, and then we'll finish with Yusuf.
Okay, well, you know, sometimes in the effort to get our city council's approval, I became so focused on being successful here in the community that I almost forgot about the folks in Nablus in Palestine. And after we got our city council's approval and we took our first delegation to Nablus as an official sister city, what I kept hearing from folks in Nablus was profound gratitude. And I mean, it really, really, really struck me that, oh yeah, like that's why I am doing this. That's why I didn't give up, because this is a people that are made invisible otherwise in my country. And that was like it. That was the guiding motivation driving me. And honestly, they were way, way, way more grateful, and it meant so much more to them in Palestine than here in the United States. And that made it worth it.
Thank you. Yusuf.
Did the same thing. The governor of Salfit is expecting that same or have expressed the same appreciation for taking on this effort and setting it up. For me personally, it was the showing equality between all of us as people. Nobody's better than anybody else. And the minute we're able to do this under the auspices of the Sister City International or Dayton Sister City Committee, talking between Palestinians, between Israelis, between Americans, and showing that we are all equal, that's what that was my mission, that was my goal, and I think I'm very close to setting that up. And of course, seeing the Palestinian flag in the city commission.
Thank you. We're coming to the end here. We are at the end. I want to thank Yusuf and Esria profoundly for their willingness to be a part of this and to share their stories. We will have another webinar from United Methodist for Kairos Response in January, and we will send you information. If you're registered for this, you'll receive a notice about that, and it'll be another topic we hope of interest to you. Next month in December, there will be a webinar from a wider organization of which we are a part, as United Methodist for Kairos Response, also Methodist Federation for Social Action, on the doctrine of discovery, which is kind of a wide-ranging investigation into how Western colonialism and, in fact, people in my faith, the Christian faith, have dominated and oppressed people, and how we might avoid that. So you'll get information about that as well.